God, white, I'm with the white girl. Nino breeze with the trees. Fuck a bitch and her bestie, then call a plug like Southwest T. Hello. You have a collect call from Guy Fisher. This was way back in '89 when the Miami boys had them homicides with them. Rich Porter, real fly nigga. Yeah, I see you niggas shining. They Uncle Ice with the double cross. RP Darnell like he was mine, nigga. Grateful the customers fuck with me. Trying to get it, OG double D. Talk that shit like Blade Icewood. Like a nigga really from the D. It's for them niggas like Eddie Jackson on 7 Mile with 100 keys. Damn. Lord forgive me for this trap shit. Sergeant Smack make it backflip. Telly Hank with the action. With the Vato speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews how I vanish. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS's on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Blah blah like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby May, just caught a touchdown.
Yo, we back. It's your boy Popalot. Mobb ties. We on our way to Maryland with it. Baltimore to be more exact. Everywhere in Baltimore, but with these niggas we about to cover right now. So yeah, y'all niggas, y'all Baltimore niggas, y'all niggas get in the comment box, let it be known. Yeah, fuck east, west, north, motherfucker, everywhere in Baltimore. Now the niggas that we gonna be covering today is gonna be the Gun Trace Task Force, or the GTTF. Now, a little bit about the Gun Trace Task Force. They were tasked with removing, or first off, they were a specialized division of the Baltimore Police Department, and they were tasked with the removal of illegal guns from the streets. I'm sure also stopping violence, hence the removal of illegal guns will lead to the cease of violence. Not sure exactly how many officers were assigned to this specific unit, but it's going to be 8 officers that we're going to be talking about today, and those officers are going to be Mamadou Gando, aka G Money, Vivadu Hendricks, Daniel Herschel, Wayne Jenkins, or should I say Sergeant Wayne Jenkins, who is going to be the head of the unit, Jamel Ram, Marcus Taylor, Maurice Ward, and Thomas Ellers. And those are going to make up the guys that we are going to be covering on Mobb Ties, nigga. Now, before y'all niggas like, oh, okay, man, it's these cops, man, we got covering cops. First off, these gonna be the most foulest, wickedest niggas y'all niggas ever seen, nigga. Watch, nigga. Please believe me, man. Y'all niggas do not sleep on these niggas. These niggas was a next level of foul. I'm not gonna give away the whole story, but I am definitely gonna highlight some of the shit in the story that stuck out to me, nigga. Now, the first main thing that stuck out to me is, now, 2 of those officers that I named end up taking the shit to trial. I'm not going to tell you what 2 officers. Y'all check it out and y'all going to see. I want to say one ended up getting sentenced to 25 years in a federal case. The other one was like right around 18 years, if I'm not mistaken. One that I seen that copped the plea. That's what I'm going to speak of, because you're going to see this pretty much soon. The one that I referenced as G Money, I want to say he was facing up to 60 years, 20 years on a RICO, and I want to say like 40 years on a drug trafficking, if I'm not mistaken, or vice versa, however they flipped it. And this shit go way, way back, man, back to 2010. Some shit happened. Y'all just pay attention from the start. That's all I'm going to tell you, man, because everything... so everything is gonna play, everything gonna make sense, put it like that, and it ain't always what it seems. But from a little bit of my research, it looks like this the heat was brought onto the ship by the Freddie Gray situation in Baltimore. I think it was said that the Department of Justice and some other agencies took a deeper look into the Baltimore Police Department, um, and pretty much, I'm gonna say that's what led to uh, this discovery of this rogue police department, or should I call them a gang? Y'all niggas get in the comment box. Y'all, shit, by the time this is done, yeah, y'all get in the comment box. Let me know what y'all niggas think these niggas was. These was the most feared gang. And just for the niggas that want to know how come we covered these niggas on Mob Ties, I'm just going to go down a list of shit that pretty much made me cover this. The one officer, G Money, when he was on trial, he alleged that he had a partner, and I want to say the partner was Jamel Rayam. He was involved in a police shooting where somebody was murdered, shot in the head. Mamadou Gondo asked him what happened. He said Rayam told him that the suspect tried to run, and I think G Money or Mamadou asked him what happened, and Reyes's reply was, "Fuck it." He tried to run. I didn't want to chase him, type shit. That's one. These niggas used to roll around with BB guns and plastic guns to plant it on niggas just in case they get involved in an officer involved shooting, to make it look like you had a pistol on them, to make it a justified shooting. God damn, nigga, y'all niggas cold-blooded, nigga, cold-blooded. Them niggas, wow, man. What else? Ain't got shit on them niggas. These niggas was still in overtime. One of the niggas went to some shit down in South Carolina for a whole week. And he was on the clock on overtime. He charged the whole shit to overtime the whole week. He was on vacation, my nigga, the whole fucking week. Dog, 40 hours. He was on vacation. He charged that shit. Oh, that's not enough? All right, what about this other shit? They pretty much saw two niggas in a car. They went to go apprehend these niggas. They stop these niggas. The niggas end up taking off in a car. No bullshit. Y'all think I'm lying, but pay attention. Y'all gonna see this shit for your own eyes. The niggas go take off in a car, and this was at the beginning of the shit. I want to say the dudes that the dudes that they was chasing, they end up losing control of the car. They hit a porch in a neighborhood, I want to say in North Baltimore. They ended up killing the 86. The dudes that the police chasing now. They ended up killing the 86-year-old dude by the name of I want to say his name was Elbert Davis or something like that, who his daughter was actually a officer with the Baltimore Police Department, my nigga. This shit, wow. Yeah, so they end up chasing them niggas. The niggas that they end up chasing that killed the dude, man, they was on the news talking about giving them niggas vehicular manslaughter charges, dog. They ended up locking them niggas up for work. Man, these niggas will plant some shit on you. Matter of fact, man, any nigga that had any run-ins with these niggas in Baltimore, get in the comment box, and I know some niggas did, man. I know some people be like, well, Pop, man, how you found this story or whatever? And this shit is fresh, this shit is prevalent, shit's going on. The officers, I want to say that they've just been sentenced. But yeah, I just happened to stumble on this when I was doing research on another case from Baltimore, and I had a subscriber go in the comments and say, man, you're not covering the real shit. It's a real gang out here doing a thing. One of these niggas we went to high school with, these niggas is no joke. They actually robbed a well-known Baltimore rapper, I want to say, by the name, I want to say his name is Young Moose. If I'm right, y'all get in the comment box, let me know. If y'all heard about that situation, man, this shit is so wild, man. Motherfucking, some of this shit you just cannot make up, man. I am not gonna, man, shit, I can't talk any longer. I'm gonna let y'all check this shit out for yourself. It's your boy Popalot. We're gonna be back with some more extra real shit. You already know what it is. Mob ties.
The two drug suspects who police say crashed into a vehicle in northwest Baltimore, killing an elderly man, are being held tonight without bail. Umar Burley and Brent Matthews allegedly were fleeing from arrest when the crash happened yesterday. And now authorities are considering whether vehicular manslaughter should be added to the drug charges they're already facing. 86-year-old Albert Davis was killed in the crash. He's the father of a Baltimore City officer.
We have a great support structure in place, and so her colleagues, she's getting a lot of support from her colleagues, and you know, we're helping her cope the best way we can.
Both suspects are due in court late next month.
Did they identify themselves as police officers?
No, it wasn't a chance. It was a bang situation. Once they ran into me, and then once the ones in the front tried to block me in, and they came out with the masks on and stuff like that. I never was in park. It was up the car. I just pulled over for a second to talk the phone. I was in drive. So once they jumped out with the guns, I immediately took off because I feared, and I feared for my life.
After this incident happened, it just ruined my life.
Albert Brown describes a police stop that led to his arrest on gun and drug violations. Charges dismissed in court Monday because the officers involved are now indicted in a federal corruption case.
Is there a reason you don't have your seatbelt on today?
I was just pulling out.
This is police body camera video of Brown's arrest last August. Attorney Ivan Bates says the officers violated their own general orders.
The body camera footage was not turned on until after my client was arrested.
Detectives Daniel Herschel, Jamel Rayam, Marcus Taylor, and Sergeant Wayne Jenkins made the stop in the 3300 block of Reisterstown Road in northwest Baltimore. They are 4 of the 7 officers recently indicted in a federal corruption probe. In the body camera video, one officer shows a gun and cocaine allegedly found in Brown's vehicle. Brown, who worked for Safe Streets, says he lost his job after being charged.
I felt real disrespected. Why was I being pursued? For what reason? I'm in a gas station. I'm getting pulled over for not having a seatbelt on inside a gas station, putting air in my tire. It don't make no sense at all.
He says the officers also went to his West Baltimore home and searched it without a warrant as he sat outside.
Just going to somebody's house without no warrant.
It's called exigent circumstances.
Bates says all cases involving the indicted officers should be dismissed.
The problem that I have is you just can't save these cases.
Brown says there should be retribution, but for now,
I'm just happy just to try to get my life back together and take care of my family. That's my main issue.
Now, the city state's attorney's office says charges against Albert Brown were dismissed solely based on the fact that the 4 BPD witness officers in this case are part of the recent federal indictment. And Baltimore City Police tell us the violation of policy was caught during a routine audit of bodywork camera videos. An internal investigation was launched and disciplinary action was initiated. Now, police are calling a review of the cases involving the indicted officers grueling and painful. Reporting live from downtown Baltimore, Barry Sims, WBAL-TV 11
A Baltimore
News.
police officer planting drugs to implicate an innocent man. It's the sort of police corruption story we've become accustomed to, along with those of racial profiling and unprovoked violence. And when these stories emerge, authorities are quick to blame a few bad apples and promise further training of individual officers. But the testimony of 4 former detectives here at the Baltimore District Court over the last few weeks has revealed not only the depths police corruption can reach, but also the framework in which it flourishes. At least one officer charged was promoted, even as complaints about his conduct racked up, and the city paid out hundreds of thousands of dollars in settlements for violent misconduct. These men were part of Baltimore's Gun Trace Task Force, described as an elite crime-fighting unit. But in fact, 4 of these men have testified that not only were they stealing and selling guns, they'd embarked on a criminal rampage against the city's African-American community. And it wasn't just guns they stole, but drugs, cash, and valuables. Some they sold, some they kept. They would rob houses. Sometimes they would supply their militarized police equipment to members of the public so that they could rob houses while the officers kept watch. They attempted to terrorize African-American men, driving their cars at high speed towards people and then chasing and arresting anyone who ran. They would have toy guns handy in order to plant them on suspects if they were, quote, in a jam, i.e. they shot an innocent person. Some 3,000 of their arrests are now under review. None of this has come as any surprise to those in black neighborhoods like Sandtown who've long complained about police corruption. This was the home of Freddie Gray, who died in police custody in 2015. Their answer is clear. Law enforcement has to be transformed.
Not just feeling like you have to be occupying force in order to be a police officer.
But this was the mayor of Baltimore's response to a question about whether she was even following the trial.
No, I have not. Look, I got to run the city. I mean, I don't have time.
She and the police commissioner are sticking to the few bad apples argument, which was weakened further after an instructor at the Baltimore Police Academy said this about almost a third of the new batch of police officers who'd graduated last week. We're giving them a badge and a gun tomorrow, the right to take someone's liberty, ultimately the right to take someone's life if it calls for it, and they have not demonstrated they can meet constitutional and legal standards. Meanwhile, the Baltimore officers who testified in court say there are many others throughout the criminal justice system, from internal affairs to the state attorney's office, who helped them cover up their alleged crimes. Shia Britansi, Al Jazeera, Baltimore.
The search for a gunman who killed a Baltimore police officer is entering its 9th day. 18-year police veteran Sean Suter was gunned down in a vacant lot. He was shot the day before he was expected to testify in a high-profile corruption case involving other Baltimore police officers. Chris Van Cleve is in Washington. Chris, good morning.
Good morning. Police continue to believe Detective Suter was the victim of a random attack while investigating a murder in a neighborhood prone to violence. But after 9 days in a citywide manhunt, they are yet to name a suspect, and the lack of developments has heightened interest in Suter's grand jury testimony. Baltimore police have asked the FBI to enhance this audio from Detective Sean Suter's final radio call.
It's unintelligible right now. We don't know exactly what he said, but he was clearly in distress.
On Wednesday, police confirmed signs of a struggle were found on Suter's clothing, and the veteran officer was shot in the head at close range with his own weapon. Another revelation came when investigators confirmed Suter was shot the day before he was supposed to testify in a federal racketeering case involving 8 members of an elite Baltimore police unit called the Gun Trace Task Force. They are now facing charges of stealing money, property, and narcotics from civilians over a 2-year period.
Well, I understand the wild possibilities that go through people's minds when we all want answers. I just am determined to keep following the evidence. There's nothing that we won't consider.
The main witness to Suter's murder is his partner. He told police Suter approached a man acting suspicious. Investigators say video shows his partner took cover after hearing gunfire.
We do not know where these shots came from. We have officers in bad locations.
The shooting spawned a citywide manhunt that put a Baltimore neighborhood on lockdown. At the scene of the shooting, some residents are offering their prayers.
He deserved that prayer. The family deserved that prayer. Our city of Baltimore deserved the prayer.
The reward being offered for information about the detective's murder now stands at over $315,000. A funeral for the father of 5 is scheduled for next Wednesday. Vlad?
All right, Chris, slain homicide detective Sean Suter was supposed to testify in was unsealed today by the federal government. And ABC 2 News investigative reporter Brian Kubler is here now to update us on this case and what it all means. Brian.
Well, Jimmy, these are fresh new charges against a former Baltimore police sergeant who has already been charged and in federal custody since March. This specific case dates back to 2010, and as the Baltimore Police Commissioner confirmed today, Sergeant Wayne Jenkins used and set up Sean Suter in a drug planting case. It was unsealed today. This is the case in which Detective Sean Suter was scheduled to appear before a grand jury the day after he was murdered. Suter was going to testify about this scene back in 2010 where a high-speed chase ended with a collision with another car, killing one and destroying this front porch at Bell Avenue and Gwynn Oak in northwest Baltimore. Commissioner Kevin Davis says then Officer Suter was simply used as a pawn by his sergeant.
He was used and he was put in a position where he unwittingly recovered drugs that had been planted by another police officer. And that's a damn shame.
Because that other officer was Sergeant Wayne Jenkins, the supervisor over the corrupt Gun Trace Task Force that since March 1st has been in federal custody awaiting trial on extortion, racketeering, and overtime fraud. This indictment spells out how Jenkins planted drugs in the car that day and then ordered Suter to retrieve them, all the while Suter unaware of the plant. These charges against Jenkins only pile on the daunting indictment he already faces from last spring. But it is evidence of just how far back federal authorities believe his nefarious and corrupt policing reaches.
Hopefully he'll be put underneath of a jail, but this guy was able to operate with impunity on this police department for far too long. And if there are any other people associated with him or that federal investigation that I need to be aware of to make the best decisions on behalf of this police department, I need to know who those people are.
Still, the commissioner believes the testimony Sean Suter was scheduled to give in this 2010 case is not related to his murder 2 weeks ago. The police department has been telling us throughout this week that they do have new details and an update in that murder investigation. We're told today that that news conference is scheduled for early tomorrow afternoon.
Slain homicide detective Sean Suter was on the take. At least convicted gun trace task force detective Mamadou Gondo knew him to be back in 2008 or 2009 when they were both on the same squad. That stunning revelation came in the cross-examination of Gondo, which followed hours of direct questioning by the government this morning. Painstaking testimony that covered everything from, quote, street rips and pocket surfing, stealing money from people on the street, to intel on bigger targets. Gondo testified how at one point Sergeant Wayne Jenkins wanted to focus more on the bigger targets and, in an effort not to get too greedy, wanted 3 of those a year for roughly $100,000 apiece. Quote, it was always about drugs and money, Gondo said of Jenkins. He thrived on it. But Gondo's testimony also implicated Detective Daniel Herschel, who he remembers saying before one robbery, quote, I could use the money. I'm trying to buy a house. Gondo also testified how he was tipped off to this federal investigation 3 separate times. Once by his partner Jamel Ram, who said their old sergeant Tom Allers told him. Once by Detective Maurice Ward, who said a Sergeant Ryan Gwynn told him. And finally, Herschel himself. Wide-ranging testimony that continues to implicate more Baltimore police officers, including now a slain homicide detective. And all of it, University of Maryland law professor Doug Colbert says, only further shakes this city's confidence in its police department.
It's very, very disturbing. I mean, these are matters of the highest public interest, the trust of a police officer and of a department. And so it's going to be very difficult for people to know which officers they can trust and which ones are dirty.
And putting the entire department on trial is the strategy of the defense. Under an afternoon of cross-examination, Gondo recalled a police-involved shooting in 2009 involving his partner, Jamel Ram. He says Ram told him he shot a man dead at point-blank range in his car as he drove off from a stop in northwest Baltimore. Ram told Gondo, quote, expletive, I just didn't want to chase him. Gondo then said he was told Dean Palmier, now a deputy commissioner, showed up at that scene to coach the detectives on what to say and how to handle the investigation. When the defense attorney asked Gondo why he never reported what Ram said to Internal Affairs, Gondo said he was a young detective at the time against higher-ups. Quote, you have to think like that. Now, Gondo is one of the last witnesses for the government. The U.S. is expected to rest its case very soon, and then the defense of both detectives will start up. For now, we are live in downtown Baltimore. Brian Kubler, ABC 2
Another
News.
major story in the city right now that we're following. Baltimore City police officers on the wrong side of the law. Allegations of robbery, lies, and drugs. Now 7 officers are under arrest. Investigator Mike Kelgren is live at federal court downtown, where the officers just appeared in court in this explosive case. Mike?
Vic, what's happening right now is the officers are one by one seeing judges. They're being temporarily detained before formal detention hearings tomorrow. These are initial court appearances, and their family members are also in court with them. It's somewhat emotional. They face 20 years behind bars if convicted. That's the maximum penalty.
The majority of Baltimore City police officers are going to be really pleased today
to see these charges brought against people who are accused of betraying their badges, of betraying their trust to the department.
Federal authorities indicted 7 Baltimore City police officers. Several of them are pictured here in a department newsletter praising their work as part of an exclusive gun task force. They're accused of stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from people obtained illegally during traffic stops and home searches, and fraudulently claiming almost $500,000 in overtime.
These police officers will never, ever, ever again commit the heinous acts that they have been alleged to commit in our community.
One officer took a vacation to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and charged the city overtime for almost the entire week. Another charged OT while playing poker at the Maryland Live Casino.
How they conduct themselves when they think nobody's listening. And what you see is a lack of respect for the system, particularly in these discussions about overtime.
The theft and fraud happened at the same time the Department of Justice was investigating Baltimore City Police. DOJ found widespread civil rights abuses and corruption.
These officers, they're 1930-style gangsters, as far as I'm concerned. The misdeeds and the criminal misconduct that they're engaged in shocks me as much as it does anyone in this room.
At least 5 high-profile federal gun cases have been dropped because these officers tainted them, and more could be coming. And the truth is, we do not know how many cases are tainted. Now, U.S. Attorney Rod Rosenstein is scheduled to have confirmation hearings to be the number 2 official at the Justice Department. He's worked a number of these corruption cases. He praised the superb work of investigators here, but there's much more to come on this story. Reporting live at Federal Court, Mike Helgren, WJZ Eyewitness News.
Okay, Mike, of course, we'll be following it all. This afternoon, the Fraternal Order of Police released this statement on the arrests and charges, which says, in part, "We are very disturbed over the charges filed against our members by the U.S. Attorney today. The officers are entitled to due process and a fair trial in accordance with the Constitution and the laws of our state."
In opening statements against former Baltimore Police gun squad detectives Daniel Herschel and Marcus Taylor, federal prosecutors borrowed a well-known phrase to describe their case. They were both the cops and the robbers at the same time, the prosecutor said. Herschel and Taylor are charged with robbery and overtime fraud, the only 2 members of the Baltimore Police Gun Trace Task Force indicted last year to take their case to a jury. Prosecutors acknowledged the intense debate in the background of the case about policing. This is not a case about police tactics or aggressive policing, the prosecutor said. It's about greed. The attorney for Daniel Herschel acknowledged Herschel crossed the line, but tried to minimize the crime. On several occasions in his 17-year career, the lawyer said, Herschel did take and receive money. He committed the crime of theft. What he didn't do, the lawyer went on, is commit the crime of robbery. Addressing the allegation of overtime fraud, Herschel's lawyer blamed what he described as unwritten policy in the police department. This OT was given with a wink and a nod right up the chain of command, the lawyer said, as long as we could say we got guns off the street. The attorney for Marcus Taylor told juries they shouldn't believe other former gun squad officers who are going to testify in the case, including Jamel Rayam and Mamadou Gondo, saying they made a career of lying. A short time ago, federal prosecutors showed the jury a black duffel bag they say former gun squad sergeant Wayne Jenkins always carried with him. In it were full black masks and also ski masks. And former Detective Maurice Ward said Jenkins also carried with him a BB gun that could be used for planting in the event there was a bad shooting. Reporting live tonight from the federal courthouse, I'm Jane Miller, WBAL TV 11 News.
Breaking news, the defense drops a bombshell in week 4 of a Baltimore man's murder trial, revealing the disgraced leader of the Baltimore Police Gun Task Force and Detective Sean Suter, who died on duty last year, both had a hand in the case. They helped track Michael Johnson, who's on trial, accused of killing Phylicia Barnes. WJZ is live at Courthouse East. Kimberly Eaton just stepped out of the courtroom to give us details on this. Kimberly?
And Mary, just within the last half hour, defense attorneys introduced evidence that both former Baltimore City Police Sergeant Wayne Jenkins and Detective Sean Suter were part of the team who tracked the prime suspect in a teenager's disappearance back in 2010. Now, North Carolina honor student Phylicia Barnes vanished just after Christmas while visiting her half-sisters in Baltimore, sparking the biggest manhunt in city history. It ended only when the 16-year-old's body floated to the surface of the Susquehanna River months later, and now as her accused killer stands trial for the third time, the lead investigator explained what happened in the weeks after she vanished and before that gruesome discovery, testifying Tuesday that a team of police officers and FBI agents worked together to trail the last man to see her alive and the only person ever charged in her death, Michael Johnson. Now, late this afternoon, his defense introduced bombshell evidence revealing that this case, too, was touched by dirty officers. Sergeant Wayne Jenkins is listed on the team of police that trailed Johnson for 24 hours a day for 12 days back in January of 2011. Jenkins is now behind bars. You may remember he was once the leader of the gun task force unit convicted of robbing citizens. Now also listed as part of that surveillance team, Detective Sean Suter. He was killed on duty last year. His name surfaced during the trials of the disgraced gun task force unit. Officers accusing him of also taking part in the police corruption. His name, of course, heard again in court on this case. Now, while the defense read their names, you could hear the reaction in their room, but shortly after trial did move forward, so it seems to have little to no impact on what's to come. Reporting live in downtown Baltimore this afternoon, I'm Kimberly Eaton for WJZ.
Still very interesting, though, Kimberly. Thank you. Johnson is on trial for the third time, once convicted but never sentenced for Barnes' death. Breaking news, the defense drops a bombshell in week 4 of a Baltimore man's murder trial, revealing the disgraced leader of the Baltimore Police Gun Task Force and Detective Sean Suter, who died on duty last year. Both had a hand in the case. They helped track Michael Johnson, who's on trial, accused of killing Phylicia Barnes. WJZ is live at Courthouse East. Kimberly Eaton just stepped out of the courtroom to give us details on this. Kimberly?
And Mary, just within the last half hour, defense attorneys introduced evidence that both former Baltimore City Police Sergeant Wayne Jenkins and Detective Sean Suter were part of the team who tracked the prime suspect in a teenager's disappearance back in 2010. Now, North Carolina honor student Phylicia Barnes vanished just after Christmas while visiting her half-sisters in Baltimore, sparking the biggest manhunt in city history. It ended only when the 16-year-old's body floated to the surface of the Susquehanna River months later, and now as her accused killer stands trial for the third time, the lead investigator explained what happened in the weeks after she vanished and before that gruesome discovery, testifying Tuesday that a team of police officers and FBI agents worked together to trail the last man to see her alive and the only person ever charged in her death, Michael Johnson. Now, late this afternoon, his defense introduced bombshell evidence revealing that this case, too, was touched by dirty officers. Sergeant Wayne Jenkins is listed on the team of police that trailed Johnson for 24 hours a day for 12 days back in January of 2011. Jenkins is now behind bars. You may remember he was once the leader of the gun task force unit convicted of robbing citizens. Now also listed as part of that surveillance team, Detective Sean Suter. He was killed on duty last year. His name surfaced during the trials of the disgraced gun task force unit. Officers accusing him of also taking part in the police corruption. His name, of course, heard again in court on this case. Now, while the defense read their names, you could hear the reaction in their room, but shortly after trial did move forward, so it seems to have little to no impact on what's to come. Reporting live in downtown Baltimore this afternoon, I'm Kimberly Eaton for WJZ.
Still very interesting, though, Kimberly. Thank you. Johnson is on trial for the third time, once convicted but never sentenced for Barnes' death.
You might call 34-year-old Mamadou Gondo a drug dealer's cop. He pleaded guilty to racketeering and distribution of heroin, admitting selling and helping dealers. Attorney Warren Brown said Gondo got caught up in a culture of plainclothes units.
Whether it deals with guns, drugs, vice, and that type of thing, it's easy to find yourself in the position that these officers have found themselves in because it's a certain culture that existed at the time.
Gondo first popped on investigators' radar in March 2016 when he was heard on wiretaps trying to protect drug dealers. He advised one how to get rid of a tracking device, and he tried to steer other police away from the dealers based on what he knew those officers were investigating. In one recorded conversation, Gondo called a dealer and said, "I got in an officer's butt for you, yo. No question, man, it's me. Yo, I'm running every light out here." In addition to his police salary, Gondo made money selling drugs, and he stole overtime. In a recorded conversation with co-defendant Jamel Rayam, Gondo spoke of how easy it was to inflate overtime hours in the department. Easy money, Jay, he said. Easy money. 1 hour can be 8. On that count, Gondo's attorney blamed what he called paltry police salaries.
They're paid like crap, quite frankly. And when you put them in these positions where they're out there chasing the bad guys, and the bad guys have all the money, yeah, sometimes they're going to snatch a stack or two.
In 2016, Gondo's salary was $71,000. With overtime, he cleared $100 grand.
They were still out there getting guns off the street, and I would submit that there were more lives saved from their success in getting guns off the street than were lost by their abuse of this overtime system.
Gondo faces 20 years maximum penalty on the racketeering count, 40 years maximum penalty on the drug distribution conspiracy, and that carries a minimum mandatory of 5 years. Reporting live tonight from the federal courthouse, I'm Jane Miller, WBAL TV 11 News.
Selling guns back on the streets, lying to judges, and selling drugs are among the many crimes a former Baltimore City police detective says he committed while on the job. He became emotional while on the witness stand today. WJZ investigator Mike Halgren is following the explosive testimony from the federal courthouse. Mike?
Denise, Jamel Rayam cried when he heard his children's voices in the background of a wiretapped call. He says he testified because he wanted to do the right thing, but there are questions about why he was still on the force after a number of past incidents. Former Detective Jamel Rayam admitted to selling guns and drugs and committing armed robberies while on the job for the Baltimore City Police Department. His tenure includes 3 police-involved shootings in 20 months. He lied to Internal Affairs about a theft with a drug-dealing former officer. He was suspended for 2 years, yet returned, and police elevated him to the elite gun trace task force. Rayam wept, describing how the unit chased a car, causing a crash. It was a bad accident, and none of us stopped to render aid and see if anyone was hurt. He even testified fellow detective Mamadou Gondo took a friend to buy a gun used to kill someone. Rayam said since his arrest last year, he's accepted responsibility. Although I was doing so much wrong, it got to a certain point where too much was too much. Lawyers for detectives Marcus Taylor and Daniel Herschel, who are on trial for robbery, overtime fraud, and other charges, painted Rayam as a serial liar. The case has exposed the lack of checks and balances in the BPD. Rapper Young Moose claimed last year that Herschel harassed him and stole money. Moose's lawyer told WJZ it was difficult to get Herschel's records.
It was like trying to pull teeth out of a tiger. I got very little cooperation from the courts. Was not allowed to get to his internal affairs records despite motions to do so.
Herschel's lawyers tried to paint the detective as an outsider in the squad who was even thought of as a possible informant and snitch who never committed crimes of violence. Jurors also heard from Herbert Tate, a man who says Detective Herschel and other officers arrested him without cause, planted drugs on him, and took cash from him. Reporting live at the federal courthouse, Mike Halgren, WJZ.
All right, thank you, Mike. One more former gun task force detective is among the prosecution witnesses yet to testify. The government may wrap up its case.
People, they sold the drugs they seized. They made false report for years, and now 2 members of the Baltimore Police Department's Gun Trace Task Force will spend years in jail. WMER 2 News' Brian Kubler is live in downtown right now with what the judge handed down today. Brian.
Jamie, former Sergeant Wayne Jenkins pleaded guilty 6 months ago. 6 months later, he learned he'll spend 25 years in a federal prison. Gentlemen, can we get a comment? Sorry. Assistant U.S. Attorney Leo Wise described the statement of facts in this case as, quote, breathtaking. He said former Sergeant Wayne Jenkins ran his elite unit as a criminal gang. At least 10 armed robberies, burglaries, $1 million in drug sales, the systematic looting of overtime in a city that can barely afford it. Wise called Jenkins committed, sophisticated, devious. The community, he told Judge Catherine Blake, has been betrayed.
You have a white shirt on.
You have a gun and cocaine, probably I would say 2 1/4 just by looking at it.
And it dated from recent cases like this one caught on body camera to 2011 when Jenkins's crew tried to rob 2 men in a car, causing them to flee, hitting and killing Albert Davis in Northwest Baltimore. Apologizing to his daughters was part of Jenkins' tearful plea today, admitting that he tarnished the badge. He told the court, quote, "I'm so sorry I did this to Baltimore." Jenkins, facing 30 years and no less than 20, knew he would lose out on fatherhood, but was hoping for a chance at being a grandfather. Judge Catherine Blake split the difference and sentenced the second but arguably most culpable member of the gun trace task force to 25 years. Jenkins' tearful apology believable to at least one of Albert Davis's daughters, and his punishment just.
It should. If it doesn't, it's something wrong, something really wrong, if this doesn't send the right message.
Now, this afternoon, former Detective Marcus Taylor was also sentenced. He now the third of that group. Taylor, you'll remember, went to trial and was found guilty earlier this year. Judge Catherine Blake sentenced him to 18 years in prison. Taylor still says he maintains his innocence. Meanwhile, tomorrow, 2 more former GTTF members will be sentenced as well. Former detectives Evodio Hendricks and Maurice Ward are scheduled to step before Judge Catherine Blake tomorrow. For now, we are live in downtown Baltimore. Brian Kubler, WMAR 2 News.